Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a time in life, a still moment, when you look in the mirror and ask, is this really me? Not the mask you wear for others, not the role you play, but the you at the core. If you're here feeling uncertain, tired, or stuck in a version of yourself that no longer fits, then let me tell you, it's time to rebuild yourself. Let me teach you something that changed my life. You don't have to stay where you fell. Acknowledge the brokenness. Growth begins with honesty. Recognize what's not working in your life. Let's begin where real transformation always begins with honesty. And I don't mean the kind of surface-level honesty we offer to others when they ask how we're doing. I'm talking about deep, radical self-truth. If you want to rebuild yourself, you first have to acknowledge that something in your foundation isn't holding anymore. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. We live in a culture that tells us to move on, to hustle through pain, to keep smiling through the storm. But ignoring brokenness doesn't heal it. In fact, it buries it deeper. The philosopher Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." What he meant is that the wounds we don't face quietly shape our choices, our relationships, and our sense of worth. Rebuilding starts when you stop pretending that everything is fine. When you sit with the parts of yourself that feel abandoned, unseen, or misunderstood. When you ask yourself without shame, where am I hurting? Where did I start to lose myself? That moment of clarity, painful as it may be, is the first brick in your new foundation. It's where self-compassion enters. It's where you stop fighting the past and start creating the future. So don't rush past your brokenness. Learn from it. It's not the end of your story, it's the start of a better chapter. The truth you're willing to face is the life you're ready to rebuild. You are not your past. You are not defined by what happened to you, but by what you choose to become. And once you've faced that truth, once you've looked at your life with clear, unflinching eyes, you must do something even more difficult. You must stop letting the past define you. See, this is where many people get stuck. They begin to believe that because something happened to them, it is them. That their identity is permanently shaped by their mistakes, by the people who hurt them, or by the limitations others placed on them. But you are not your past. You are not the version of yourself that you had to be to survive. That version served its purpose, but you are allowed, in fact you are called, to evolve. Think about it. A seed doesn't resemble the tree it becomes. The pain, the failure, the confusion, those were conditions. They are not your essence. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, wrote that everything can be taken from a person except the ability to choose their attitude in any given set of circumstances. That is the power of human freedom, the power to redefine, to reimagine. So if you're carrying a narrative that says you're unworthy or incapable or broken beyond repair, I want to ask you, who gave you that story? And why are you still holding on to it? You are not here to relive your history. You are here to rewrite your future. And your power begins the moment you decide to stop repeating and start recreating. Embrace stillness and self-reflection. Rebuilding begins in quiet moments of truth with yourself. ChatGPT said, "Now, once you've begun to release the weight of your past, there's something essential that most people overlook. The stillness." Rebuilding isn't just about doing more or moving faster. In fact, some of the most transformative work you'll ever do happens when everything is quiet. When it's just you, your thoughts, and the questions you've been too busy or too afraid to ask. In our fast-paced world, stillness is almost rebellious. We're trained to fill the silence with noise, distraction, productivity, but true self-reinvention doesn't happen in motion. It begins in reflection. It's in the quiet moments that you begin to really see yourself, not the performance, not the image, but the you behind it all. This kind of reflection is not passive, it's active inquiry. What do I really value? What am I chasing? And is it even mine to chase? What parts of me are performing for approval, and what parts are crying out for authenticity? These are not questions you answer in a hurry. These are questions that demand solitude, honesty, and time. The philosopher Blaise Pascal said, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." And he was right, because when we avoid stillness, we avoid ourselves. And when we avoid ourselves, we lose the map to where we're meant to go. So if you're serious about rebuilding, learn to be still. Let the silence teach you what the noise never could. Stillness isn't emptiness, it's alignment. And from alignment, everything real begins. Education is your power tool. Use learning, self-discovery, and knowledge as bricks in your foundation. Once you've come into stillness, once you've started to hear your own voice above the noise, then comes the next step. Learn. Not just for the sake of knowledge, but as a means of transformation. Education, in the deepest sense, is not about grades or diplomas. It's about expanding your awareness. It's about equipping yourself with tools to rebuild a life that's not just different, but deliberate. The mind is not a container to be filled. It's a fire to be lit. And every book you read, every conversation you engage in with curiosity, every moment you choose to learn rather than react, that's you laying down bricks for the new version of yourself. Because when you understand something, you gain power over it. When you learn how your emotions work, your relationships change. When you study your finances, your freedom expands. When you understand your history, you stop repeating it. The people who rebuild their lives with strength are not always the most talented or the most privileged. They are the most willing to stay teachable. They become students of life. They ask better questions. They take accountability. And they understand that growth is not something that happens to you. It's something you commit to. So, if you're rebuilding, don't just focus on changing your outer world. Invest in your inner world. Let your education, formal or informal, become your foundation. Because when you expand your mind, you don't just rebuild, you elevate. Surround yourself with builders, not breakers. The people you keep around must pour into your future. And as you begin to grow internally, emotionally, intellectually, there's a vital question you have to ask yourself. Who am I allowing into my construction zone? Because when you're rebuilding, the people around you matter more than ever. You are not just reconstructing habits or routines, you are reconstructing identity. And identity is shaped in relationship. Every person in your life either contributes to your structure or chips away at it. Some offer support, encouragement, wisdom. They hand you bricks. Others bring doubt, distraction, or subtle resistance. They bring erosion. Not everyone who's been part of your past is qualified to walk with you into your future. And that's not bitterness, it's discernment. We become, in part, the emotional average of the people we surround ourselves with. If you spend your energy around cynics, you will begin to question your vision. If you're constantly defending your growth to people who benefit from your stagnation, you're leaking energy that should be used for building. This doesn't mean you cut people off carelessly, but it does mean you get honest about your boundaries. Rebuilding yourself requires an ecosystem that supports your elevation, not one that tolerates your potential only when it stays quiet. You need people who don't just clap when you succeed, but challenge you when you drift. People who remind you who you are when you forget. So choose your circle like your life depends on it, because in many ways it does. Build with purpose. Not perfection. Progress is more important than perfection. Build intentionally. And now we arrive at perhaps the most liberating part of the process, the actual rebuilding. But let me be clear, This isn't about chasing perfection. Perfection is an illusion designed to keep you stuck, always waiting for the right moment, the perfect plan, the flawless version of yourself that will never arrive. What matters is purpose, intention, the courage to begin, knowing you'll make mistakes along the way, and that those mistakes are part of the build. Too often, we let fear of failure paralyze us. We hold ourselves hostage to some impossible standard, thinking that if we can't do it perfectly, we shouldn't do it at all. But growth is messy, healing is non-linear, reinvention is full of detours, doubts, and restarts. That's not failure. That's life, and life is not asking you to be perfect. It's asking you to be present. Every small, intentional step you take is a brick laid. Choosing to speak kindly to yourself when your inner critic rises, that's a brick, setting a boundary. Brick, learning a new skill, applying for the job, leaving the relationship, starting the journal. Brick, brick, brick. The structure may not look like much at first, but keep building, and over time something extraordinary emerges, a life that's yours. Not inherited, not borrowed, designed. So don't wait for perfect. Build anyway, build slowly, build honestly. Because a life built on purpose will always outlast one built on perfection.